and welcome to my channel. My name is Francisca, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful shift dress with Ankara patch and ruffle sleeve. If you're here and you're not subscribed to my channel, please click the subscribe button and click the bell so you get updates whenever I post new videos. And now let's get right into the tutorial. So this is the fabric that I'll be using. I used clips to hold the fabric in place because the fabric is very fluid. It moves easily. What I've done is to mark my top line. So it is from this point that I'll be inserting all my measurements. So the first measurement I'm going to be marking from this folded edge right here is my shoulder measurement. And my shoulder measurement is 14 divided by 2, that is 7. So I'll just place 7 right at the folded part of my fabric here and mark the beginning right here. Then what I'm going to do is to mark my armhole depth, and for me it is 9 inches. So I'll just come right here and mark 9 right here. Then I'll come right here and I'll mark 9 inches as well. What I'm going to do now is to join the points to have a straight line. So on this line, I'm also going to mark my shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7. So I'll just come right here, mark 7 inches, and then I'm going to draw a straight line up to connect these 2 points here and here. This is what I have. What I'm going to do now is to go ahead and mark 1 inch down for my shoulder slant. So I'm marking it from the top line here. I'll mark 1 inch down. Then I'll come right here. I'll be marking 3 inches from this armhole line. I'll be marking 3 inches from that line. And then I'll connect here to form our shoulder slant. So after connecting this, what I'm going to do is come right here and mark my neckline. So you can go with a low neckline, you can go with a higher one. That is dependent on you. So I'll be going with a neck depth of 5.5 inches. So from this top line here, I'm going to mark 5.5 inches, and then I'll connect from here now to this point with a curve. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So after I've connected it, this is what I have. Can you see the curve? This is what I have right here. What I'm going to do now is to input my bust measurement on this line here. My bust circumference is 36. 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. So I'm going to come right here, input 9 inches. Now I'm going to add 1 inch to this. So I want to have like a little bit of ease around my bust. I don't want it to be, that fitted. So I'll be adding 1 inch. This 1 inch is inclusive of seam allowance. My seam allowance is 1/2 inch, which means my ease is 1/2 inch. My seam allowance is, 1/2 inch. So just go ahead and add 1 inch to yours. So after I've marked this, now we want to create our armhole curve. I'm going to come right to this armhole depth. The remaining parts that I have here, after we have removed our 1 inch shoulder slant, I'm going to measure it. I should be having 8 inches. So 8 divided by 2, that is 4. So that 4 inches now, I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch at this point. I'll come in by 1/2 inch, connect it like this. Now what I'm going to do is create a curve connecting this point here to this 1/2 inch here to this point here where we marked 1 inch downwards for our shoulder slant. So I'll just go ahead and connect them to create our armhole curve for our front dress. So guys, once we are done with this part, the next thing I'm going to do is to input my waist, my hip, and the length of this dress. So I'm going to come right here now, and what I'm going to do is to mark from this top lines to mark my waist, and for me it is 16. So I'm going to mark 16 inches here, come right here again, mark 16 inches, and then I'm going to draw a straight line connecting these 2 points that I have marked. So can you see the line here? Then I'm going to input my waist circumference divided by 4. My waist circumference is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So I'm going to mark 7.5 right here. And then what I'm going to do is to add 2 inches of ease, seam allowance inclusive. I've marked that, then I'll connect my waist to my bust line like this. So just go ahead and do that for yours. So I'm adding this ease because I want the dress to be a little bit free. So the next I'm going to do now is mark from this top line to my hip, and for me that is 26 inches, so I'll just go ahead and do that. If you don't want to mark from the top line of your fabric, what you can do is place your waist measurements, that's the vertical shoulder to waist. I just place it here. For me, mine is 16. So 16 on my tape rule is placed on this waistline right here. And then what I'll just do is stretch my tape rule where I have 26 inches showing. I'll just go ahead and mark that. Come right here, mark 26, place 16 on the waistline so we can end up with a straight line. So I'll go ahead and mark that. And then I'll draw a straight line to, connect these 2 points that I have just marked. So after connecting them together, what I'll do is to input my hip circumference divided by 4. So my hip circumference is 41. 41 divided by 4 is 10.25. So I'll just go ahead and mark 10.25 like this. So for the hip area, I'm going to be adding ease allowance of, you can go with 1.5 inch, you can go with 1 inch. So I'll be adding ease allowance of 1.5 inches. Then I'll go ahead and connect this point to my waistline right here. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Connect it like this. So this is what I have. So guys, once we are done with our hip, we are going to be marking the length of this dress. In order to mark the length of my dress at the bottom, I placed my shoulder to hip length, which is 26 inches. I placed it right on the hip line that I've marked already. So I placed 26 here, and the length of my dress is 40 inches. So I went ahead to mark 40 inches. I just moved it like this, placed 26 here on this my hip line, and then I marked 40 inches. And then I'll go ahead and join the points together. In order to mark, the width at the bottom of my dress, you can, mark your hip measurements plus your ease and seam allowance. Just transfer all the measurements that you have here, transfer it to the bottom. Or what you can do if you want to, pencil it out a little bit, is to measure everything that you have here and subtract 1 inches from that, and then you mark it at the bottom here. So I'm going to measure everything I have at my hip like this. So I should be having 11.75. So that is what I have right here. And if I should remove 1 inch from that, that will leave me with 10.75. So I'm going to come right here now, mark 10.75. So this will help to pencil it out a little bit, and then I'll be connecting from this point here, which is the bottom of my dress, around my knee area. So I'll just connect from here now to my hip. So just go ahead and use a straight ruler to do yours so you can get an accurate measurement. So once we are done with all our markings, what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around my fabric. I'll be adding 1/2 inch to my neckline, to my shoulder slant area, to my armhole curve, No need to add any seam allowance to the side seam because it is included in the allowance that we added. So my seam allowance is 1/2 inch for the sides. Then I'll be adding 1 inch at the bottom of my dress. So when I add the seam allowance, I'll go ahead and cut this out. So guys, this is what I have after cutting. I've added my seam allowances where necessary, armhole, the shoulder slant, neckline, and at the bottom of the dress. So this is what I have, and we're going to be using this to cut the back piece. We're going to be needing our front to cut the back. So I'll just go ahead and fold my fabric and place the front piece right on top of the folded fabric. I have placed my front piece on the folded fabric, and I ensure that the center front is aligned to the folded parts of the fabric underneath, which is going to become our center back. The only place that I'm going to be making adjustments to for the back is just the neckline and the armhole. You can go with the same, length of or depth of neckline for your back piece, but I will just be coming up by 1 inch for my back, just to raise it up a little bit. So I'll just come right here, mark 1 inch, and then what I'll do is connect this 1 inch right to our front neckline that you can see here, but I'll be marking it on the fabric underneath. So I'll just go ahead and connect it like this. Can you see what I'm doing? Connect it like this. So this is what I have for my back neckline. Now the armhole too needs adjustment, because if you notice in the front pattern we marked 1/2 inch inwards. So what we are going to do now is to mark 1/2 inch outwards where we marked the 1/2 inch for the front initially. So from the edge of the front armhole, I will mark 1/2 inch on my fabric that is under. Make sure it is aligned properly so you mark it correctly. So just go ahead and mark 1/2 inch. And when you do that, what you're going to do now is to connect from this point here where you have the edge of your front piece. Just mark from here, connect it to the 1/2 inch that you have marked outwards, and then that 1/2 inch, connect it straight up to this point here. So that is what I'm going to do now. After I've marked my neckline, I've marked my armhole. Like I said, there's only these two parts that needs adjustment for the back. I will just go ahead and cut the entire fabric out following the front pattern that I have here, with the exception of the armhole and the neckline. The rest part of this back bodice is going to be the same as the front. So I'll just go ahead and cut this out now. So guys, I've cut out the back piece, and this is the back piece underneath right here. I'll just go ahead and keep this aside, and we're going to be cutting our sleeves now. I have my pattern already, and it's a long sleeve pattern that I have drafted. I have the tutorial on my channel on how to draft your basic sleeve pattern. So what I'm going to do is to fold my pattern at the elbow, because I don't want to do a long sleeve. I'm cutting an elbow length sleeve, so I'm just going to place my pattern on my fabric like this, and then what I'm going to do is to cut around my pattern, but I'll be adding a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the bottom here. Here is my sleeve after cutting it out. I used an X to indicate the back, both here and on the other sleeve, so I don't make a mistake attaching the front side of my sleeve to the back of my bodice. So I have placed my front bodice and my back bodice on top of each other with right sides touching. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and sew the shoulder slants with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll sew the shoulder slants, then I will sew the side seam all the way down with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Sew this other side seam all the way down with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I didn't need to add that to this dress because it is a shift dress. It doesn't really need that. I'm also going to grab my sleeve now, place it with right sides touching, and then I'll sew the sides of the sleeve with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I have sewn the dress at the side seam. I went ahead to overlock the raw edges. As you can see, I did the same thing for my shoulder. I sewed and overlocked the raw edges. This fabric is actually fraying, and when I did that, I also hemmed the bottom. As you can see, I hemmed the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is to attach the sleeve, which I have sewn as well and overlocked the raw edges. So I'm going to find the midpoint of my sleeve and notch. This will help me to place my sleeve well at the shoulder. So I'm going to notch the second one as well. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn my sleeve right sides out, and I have the back right here. So I need to place the back on the back of the dress. So this is actually perfect. So I have my back right here, and then this is the back of my sleeve. So I will just place my sleeve inside my dress. Can you see? And then I'll place the notch part of the sleeve at the shoulder seam. So I'm just going to align it like this, and then I'll pin down. Then the side seam of my sleeve, I'm going to align it to the side seam of the bodice. So I'm going to open my seam like this, place it right on top of it, and then I'm going to pin it down. So what I'm going to do now is to take this to my sewing machine and stitch my sleeve all around the armhole of my dress. So that's what I'm going to do now. I've attached my sleeve to my bodice, and this is what I have. I've gone ahead to overlock raw edges where I should. I've attached the two sleeves. This is what I have. Now I'm going to be attaching something like a ruffle at this point here. So what I did was to cut a long strip of fabric. Can you see? So this fabric that I have here is about 3 times my elbow circumference. So the circumference I have here is 11, and the length of fabric I have here is about 31 or 32. I think it should be 31. So just close to 3 times your elbow circumference, so that you can have like a lot of ruffles. So I actually have 30 right here. So it is measuring 30 inches by 5.5 inches. I made sure to overlock this so that I will not have issues overlocking after. You need to cut 2 because each one will go to each sleeve of your dress. So what I'm going to do now is either sew a gathered or basting stitch at this top here and gather it to around the circumference of this sleeve right here, or I do pleats. Do you understand? So it's either you do gathers or you do pleats, whichever works for you. If gathers will give you more fullness, fine, go ahead and do gathers. If you want to do pleats because it is appealing to you, go ahead and do pleats. So I'm going to take this to my machine now and run my gathered stitch right at this point. I have run my gathered stitch on the fabric. So what I'm going to do is now pull my stitches to gather it to the circumference of my sleeve. So that's what I'm going to do now. So after gathering to my sleeve circumference right here, this is what I have. So what I'm going to do before attaching this to the sleeve is to go ahead and sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll sew both of them down, and after sewing the sides together, what I'm going to do is to bring my sleeve out like this. Can you see? I'm going to be wearing one of this on the sleeve. So I'm going to place it like this. Can you see? And I insert my sleeve through it. So can you see what I'm doing? And I ensure that I have right sides of the gathered fabric touching the right sides of my sleeve. And I make sure that the seams match. So what I'm going to do now is to pin this down. I did not want to cut the thread that I used to gather this fabric out so that it doesn't, loosen the gather. So I'll just leave it there. Once I'm done sewing, I can go ahead and cut it out. I match the seam of the gathered fabric to the side seam of my sleeve. So can you see what I'm doing? So once they are matched, I'll go ahead and pin this down. Then I'll take this to my sewing machine and sew the gathered fabric around the bottom of the sleeve with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Whatever I do here, I'm going to repeat the same thing for my other sleeve. After sewing, guys, this is what I have. This is how the sleeve looks on the outside. Can you see that? I've also gone ahead to press my dress so that it is nice and neat before we go ahead and attach the patch fabric. To cut out the fabric for my patch, what I did was to put my fabric on fold like this. Can you see? So after putting it on fold, I went ahead and marked 7.5 inches at the bottom like this. Can you see? And I'm going with a height of 13 inches. I'm going to cut off this bottom because I don't like to see the writings on my fabric when I sew. So I marked 13 inches upwards, and what I'm going to do is to just create like a curve and connect it all the way to that 7.5 inch mark. So this part here is sort of like bigger than or wider than this bottom part. So I'll just create a curve like this. You can do any shape of patch that you want. And then once I create that curve, I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So after cutting this out, this is what I have. So by the time I open this up, I should be having something like this. So can you see? What I'm going to do now is to add fusible interfacing to this to make it a little bit thicker and easy to overlock around the edges. If you want to know how I make fabric patch, please go ahead and watch the tutorial that is linked up above. You just see an eye that will come out. I have my interfacing right on this side. The reason why I added interfacing is so that it will be easy for my zigzag stitch to run through the edges of this fabric without actually creating holes on my Ankara fabric. So just to make it a little bit more sturdier for the zigzag stitch to take hold. Now we are going to be attaching this to our dress. So I'm just going to get my dress now, and we are attaching it to the front of this dress. So right here is the front part, and what we're going to do now is place it like this. I need to make sure that the space from the side seam to this point is equal to the space from the side seam to this point here. I'll just go ahead and measure from side seam to side seam. And I have 21 inches. And right here I have 15 inches. So 21 minus 15, that is 6. So I'll be placing my Ankara patch 3 inches away from the side seam, 3 inches away from the side seam. I hope that is clear. So you can go ahead and measure and mark and then place it. So I'll be marking 3 inches right here, and then I'll come right here and mark 3 inches as well. So I'll just place it like this. Meanwhile, I'm not going to just sew my Ankara patch right at the edge. If you want to stitch it right on top, you can go ahead and do that. But I'll rather just, fold it in so that the bottom appears much neater. So this is how I'm going to attach my fabric patch. I'll be placing 1/2 inch right at this point where I marked the 3 inches, but on the inside. So can you see what I'm doing? I'll be placing it on the inside with wrong side touching wrong side of my dress. So I'll just go ahead and pin this down. I'll do the same thing for this side as well. Place it like this, making sure that I match the edge of the patch to where I marked my 3 inches from the side seam. So I'll just place it 1/2 inch inwards. So can you see that? And what I'll be doing is taking this to my sewing machine. So I'll be stitching both the patch and the fabric together, so that by the time I finish stitching and bring it like this, the bottom is going to appear much more neater. So I'll just go ahead and stitch this right now. So guys, after stitching, this is what I have. What I'm going to do now is to fold my patch like this, and then I'm just going to rearrange the hem and pin down. So can you see what I'm doing? Just rearrange it. Let the hem of the dress touch the edge of the fabric on the inside. So I'll just go ahead and pin my fabric down like this. Do the same thing all around the edge. Align it properly and pin down. So once I'm done aligning the bottom, I'm just going to go on to pin the patch on the fabric. After pinning the patch down to my fabric, this is what I have. So while you are pinning, please make sure to ease out any crease on this fabric, because if you have creases underneath, by the time you are sewing, it's not going to make your dress look appealing when you wear it. It's going to, look somehow. So now that I'm done with this, I'll go ahead and take this to my sewing machine, and I'll be sewing at the border of the patch all around this fabric. So guys, after sewing my patch on my fabric, this is what I have. This is how it looks like, guys. My dress is actually looking much more beautiful with this patch on it. So this is actually an easy summer wear shift dress. So once you're done stitching the border of the patch on your dress, you can go on to do just a little bit of tacking at the bottom to kind of like, hold it down in place. Just a little bit. You don't need to do too much. So I have just about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tack stitches that I did right here. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell so you get updates when we post new videos. And I'm going to be seeing you in my next video. Bye.